Alright, hi guys. Sorry it took me so long to kind of get this out. I've been a little sick over the past week and feeling a bit under the weather, so it's taken me a little longer than I would have liked to have recorded this video. But if you are here, congratulations, and welcome to part 2 of my email on Debian tutorial videos. So before we get started, I'd like to go over some basic stuff, some introduction stuff, maybe do a small recap over what we talked about in part 1 of the video, and then sort of build from there. So I guess in part 1 we discussed what the server kind of was, an introduction to what you would need to get things done, you know, that sort of thing. If you're a complete novice and don't know a lot about Debian and don't really have a clear understanding of what all this is going to entail, I definitely encourage you to watch part 1. If you're a seasoned admin, you know what you're doing, especially if you're a seasoned Linux professional, then you can probably skip the first video. Probably the most important thing in it is going to be a couple of prerequisites regarding how to get this system to talk to external servers such as Outlook.com and Google's Gmail email service. Other than that, the rest should be pretty straightforward. And the other thing we discussed was I showed a sort of a flow chart of how this was all going to be sort of configured, and it's more like a, I guess, planning sort of thing. So that was part 1, and again, if you are a novice and you haven't watched it, definitely check it out. If you are a professional and you know what you're doing, then you can probably safely skip it. It was sort of just an introduction kind of a thing. Alright, so to keep the running time down, let's move on. First, a little bit about the environment. So this is the actual server that we are going to be configuring here, and it is going to function as an email server. So we're going to be using the terminal for this guy, and LX terminal should do. It doesn't really matter whatever your terminal of preference is, though if you are using or building this for a production environment, I highly encourage you to build it on a system that does not have a graphical user interface. Going to be important, I think, to do that. So what is our system configuration currently? Well, this is a stock build of Debian 8 Jessie. It is currently using the LXDE graphical environment, and that is because I want to be able to do demonstrations and such easier than having, building a bunch of virtual machines and try to string them together. I'd rather just, do it all off of one machine. It's easier to manage and easier to destroy at the end. I'd also like to make it perfectly clear that I hope at the end I have a good demonstratable server. But the key thing here is that there's going to be a lot of places where I'm sticking placeholder information, such as the domain names and the IP addresses and such. This is all going to be pointing back at itself on my end. So you're going to be substituting that with your own domain names, your own relevant IP addresses. So for you, it's going to work differently than for me. So I want to make that perfectly clear. If I get to the very end of this and can't demonstrate that it functions, it may be because of something along those lines. If that is the case, then I can show you another server that I built using these steps that does function. I'll just have to censor a lot of things on it so that it doesn't reveal any private information about that particular server. But theoretically and hopefully this thing should function, and I'm trying to do this all in one take. I do it in a very kind of unscripted manner. I sort of just talk and think at the same time. So I'm not reading from a script or anything, though I do have tutorials to my left, or to my right I've got a keyed up sort of Cliff Notes thing to make sure hopefully that I don't skip anything, and I keep it in sort of a patterned good tutorial format. And then on my left I've got a production version of my server so that I can reference functional files and configuration scripts that I've already written. That way I don't have to fumble for things, and I can just show you exactly what I'm talking about without having to, you know, try and work this out while I'm recording, because that would be kind of a nightmare. So hopefully I can get this all done in one take, and hopefully it all goes smoothly and I'm able to build a server that works. That's the hope. We'll see how that goes. At any rate, I'll try to cobble this thing together and edit it together in such a way that it makes sense, and that at the end of this, you guys, if you follow these steps, will get a working server. That is definitely my goal. As far as how we're going to lay out the information, I'm going to give you guys the core information in this video. So this is going to be the demonstration video where I'm going to show you how to do this. At least get the core parts of it up and running. I may do a part 3 where I'll do some other additional configuration, such as metrics, and you know, maybe show you guys how to put a web client, so like Rainloop or something, together. And also configure not an email, but a web server so that users can change their passwords and set up email forwarding and such on their own without constant intervention from you as an administrator, because that would get old quickly. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need is we're going to start installing some packages. And the set we're going to need is, first of all, if you haven't, let's elevate to root. So let's go ahead and do that. In your case, you can use sudo or whatever. I'm going to do this whole thing as root. That's kind of taboo, but I don't feel like configuring sudo. And like I said, this is a default. This is a default installation, so it's quite likely a lot of that's not configured. Basically, all I did was install Debian, you know, update some things, and then install the GUI, and that's it. So not a whole lot going on there. So I'm going to go ahead and switch. I've already got my account switched over to root. If you're going to be using sudo, remember to enter sudo in front of almost all the commands I do. I'll try and let you know when something's going to require elevation and when something won't. But if something doesn't work, make sure you go back and double check that you put sudo in front of it, because it should work. All the packages you're going to be using will be stock Debian packages. There shouldn't be anything extra from outside of Debian. That just shouldn't be a thing, like, at all. So you should be able to install all of this stuff without any problems right from the repositories. So let's get right to that, actually. So first we're going to do apt get install. We're going to need PHP 5, PHP 5 FPM -FPM, I think it is, and then PHP 5 IMAP, PHP 5 encrypt. So PHP, and hopefully you guys can see this. Actually, let me, before I continue on, I'm going to blow this up a little bit if possible. Let me see if I can do it. Foreground font, cursor, blink, bell, underline, shortcuts. Style. There we go. Let's just knock this font up a little bit to make sure you guys can see it nicely on low resolution monitors. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and go up even higher than that. Let's go ahead and just push it all the way to 20. There you go. Alright, so that should make it much easier to read if you guys are doing this on low resolution screens. I don't want people to struggle to read this stuff. And there's going to be way too many of these commands to be posting in the description, so it's quite likely that you're going to want to read it here. I'll try to put the longer ones in the description, but I can't be 100% on that. Open SSL, we're going to need SSL-cert, I believe we're going to need. Apache, we're going to need Apache 2. Postfix admin and PHP my admin. So those should be things. We'll go ahead and leave it at that for now, I think. And you should get something that looks about like that. Let's go ahead and yes that guy. And let it do its thing. And hopefully that will be relatively successful. Okay, so we are missing some stuff here. Let me just double check. Let's see. Out. Actually, I don't need CD. We'll just buy it. CD sources. Dot list. Okay, yeah, that's all commented out. Okay, so let me just update my. Let's see. Apt-get update. Let me just update my repository listing here and see if that helps. There's probably been some updated packages since the last time I booted this VM. So I'm just going back to the prior command and attempting the install again after running apt-get update. And hopefully that will be successful. And I may, if this goes really, really fast on my end, it may be because I cut out portions of the installation to hurry the video along, to basically save you time. There's no sense in making you wait for the install to watch. You don't need to see the install on my end. And if you want to pause the video for your install so that you can keep up with me, that's fine. But I figured it's better to just cut it out and save the video time, so that people who don't want to see the installation, progress bars or whatever, don't have to. I'll just let that do its thing. Okay, so here we're going to need to set a password for MySQL's root user account. This is very important, so make sure you set a password that you can remember and keep up with. I'm just going to make mine root for the time being. Again, this is a system that's going to get destroyed. So we're going to be using the Apache 2 web server, so make sure you select Apache 2 there. Okay, so eventually you're going to get to a point where you'll have Postfix admin will ask you a question during the installation. This is the first of those questions. Basically, this is talking about the database configuration. We're going to go ahead and tell it, yes, we want to configure a database. Yes, we want to use MySQL. We're going to give it the password. We gave the MySQL configuration. That's going to be root in my case. It should definitely be something different in yours. And the MySQL application password for Postfix admin, I recommend making this a different password than the administrator password for MySQL. I'm just going to make mine the same, root, for simplicity's sake here. Pretty much all passwords on this particular system are going to be root, and if those, for me it's not a security risk because this machine's getting destroyed at the end of the video. So PHP MyAdmin package must have a database installed. Yes, we want to configure that. We're going to go ahead and go with root again, root again, root again. So that should give us PHP MyAdmin and Postfix admin. Those are going to be our two administrative tools for working with our database structures. Okay, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and push through with the Postfix install, and we're going to install saves the library for authentication purposes. So we're going to go apt-get install postfix postfix-mysql libsasl2 libsasl2-modules alias libsasl2-modules-sql. Alrighty. And we're going to tell it yes. And we're going to tell it we want to do an internet site. For for this, okay, this is where you're going to want the fully qualified domain name of your mail server. So whatever that may be. In my case, demo mail, which is my machine name, and then domain.local will be my domain name here, because my server, this demonstration server, is not on a domain. If your domain is, for instance, google.com, which I'm sure it isn't, but if it were, or example.com, or outlook.com, then it would be mail.google.com, mail.outlook.com, mail.example.com, etc., etc., and so on and so forth. So figure out what your domain is. Hopefully you have that squared away and set it up. In my case, we're going with the default there. Like I said, that may be one of the reasons why things don't quite work out well for me. I'm not sure what that's going to do, because I've only ever configured this in my good environment. So trying to configure this in a test demonstration environment where I'm not using real information is kind of sketchy. But hopefully, running through these steps, we should be good to go. Okay, so now we're going to configure our virtual mail group. So we're going to do group, GRUP, add -A, or -G, excuse me. We're going to go ahead and give that 3000 vmail, and then we're going to do user add -D home vmail -U 3K -G 3K email. So this should create a user and a group, both entitled vmail, and the user vmail should now be a member of the group vmail, and you can verify this by typing groups vmail like that, and you should get this is your return. That's your user, and that's the groups by which it is a member. Alright, so now we're going to begin configuring the Postfix setup here. So let's just go to cd etc and then Postfix. And in Postfix, we want to do vi main, and you will need root to do this, like for sure, .cf. And in here, you're going to look for my destination, which this little thing I did at the bottom there, that was the slash, and then my dest, which is the search. So here you can see mine is already sort of pre-configured for me. Just make sure that that matches your domain names and such. Specifically, this one here needs to be subdomain.yourdomain.com, so mail.example.com or org, or whatever it may be. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to go to the end of this file here, which is our main.cf file, and we're just going to append to the end of this file some extra content here. This is where we're going to be setting up our virtual mailboxes and such. So this line that I've just added here with the 2 hashes, that's just a comment, and it's just to separate what I'm adding from what was already there. So we want virtual UID maps equals static :300, and this is gonna, or 3000, and this is actually going to be quite a lot of things here. So this may be one of those things I try to put in the description for you guys, but hopefully you can follow along. GID maps is going to equal, again, static :3000. And what this is doing is that's just setting the user ID and the group ID that we had previously configured to that 3000 number. And now we want to set our virtual mailbox base equal to home and then vmail, and we want to set virtual mailbox domains, and we want to make that a MySQL colon, and we're gonna do Etsy Postfix MySQL underscore virtual underscore mailbox underscore maps.cf, and that's a file we're actually going to create. Virtual underscore mailbox underscore maps equals MySQL colon, and the same basic file structure here, postfix slash MySQL underscore virtual underscore mailbox maps. So I messed up. So this top one here, we want to change it from mailbox underscore maps to mailbox underscore domains, because they should match. So this is going to be the mailbox underscore maps.cf. Then down here, virtual underscore mailbox underscore, this is going to be, oh, nope, excuse me, this one's going to be alias, alias underscore maps is going to be equal to MySQL colon, and we're going to do Etsy postfix MySQL underscore virtual underscore, I hope I'm doing this right, yeah, alias underscore maps dot cf, and then we need to do relay domains equals MySQL colon Etsy postfix MySQL underscore relay underscore domains dot cf, and then we want to do virtual transport equals LMTP colon Unix colon private slash Dovecot dash LMTP. And some of these things, as you can tell, are things we haven't actually configured or set up yet. So this is going to break stuff once we actually, restart Postfix, obviously, until we get this stuff configured correctly. Okay, so now we want to do SMTP D underscore recipient PIENT restrictions RESTRCTIMS, and then equals, I'm just going to enter that down, just pop over one, permit underscore my networks, comma, permit underscore Sazel underscore authenticated, reject underscore non underscore FQDN underscore hostname, reject underscore non underscore FQDN sender. And what these are, they're just security declarations. Basically, it's determining what you're going to permit, what you're going to reject on your when you're sending or receiving email. Mostly receiving from the internet or sending out to. Okay, so what's this? Get in. Sender. Okay, so we're going to reject non-FQDN recipient. PINT. Okay, we want to reject off destination. Be very careful when you're typing these out that you spell things correctly and such. If you misspell something or mistype something or whatever, it's going to lead you to a lot of troubleshooting that you'll require here. Pipelining. Invalid host name. And then we're not going to put a comma on that end one, so be very careful there because that's going to end our statement. So the next one we're going to do is SMTPD underscore Sazel underscore auth underscore enable equals yes. And then we're going to enter down and do SMTPD Sazel security options equals no ANONYMOUS. That's no anonymous, so it basically prevents people from anonymously logging in. SMTPD underscore Sazel path, or no, type first, equals Dovecot, and then SMTPD underscore SASL underscore path equals private / auth. And then we're going to do milter underscore connect underscore macros. Oops, hang on, I skipped ahead. Milter default action. Equals accept SMTPD underscore milters equals Unix :milter dash gray list /milter dash gray list dot sock comma Unix :/claim AV /claim AV dash milter dot CTL comma. And I know these look kind of a bit crazy or whatever. These commands, they might look a little weird, but really all we're doing here is this is where we're setting up our plugins for Spam Assassin, Graylist, and Claim AV. So this is how this thing's going to know to send email to them. That's what the milters essentially do, as they filter out the email through these by passing. It's a way that the system can pass email to these other services. So last one will be Unix :spam assassin, or spam ass, short for spam assassin, and spam ass again dot sock. All right. And then we want to do make sure you press enter there if yours goes all the way to the end. I had to double check to make sure that this is supposed to be carried over to the next line, and it is. So be sure that you hit enter after that last sock dot sock there. Do milter underscore connect underscore macros equals I, B, J underscore domain underscore name if underscore name client ADDR. Okay, and then we want to do message underscore size underscore limit, and this number is kind of negotiable, I guess, but basically what it does is it allows you to set the limitation on the size of the emails that come in and their attachments. You can make it whatever you want. I set mine to be really big. I think this is in kilobytes, I want to say. So if you do like 10, 24, 0000, that should give you enough size. I think I set mine to double that at 2048. But just remember that the bigger that is, the larger your inbox inflation can become, because people can essentially send you bigger emails. But if you want to accept information like high resolution pictures and that sort of thing, it may be very important to you to set that message size limit to something that's a little bit more, tolerable, I guess. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is do SMTP underscore TLS underscore, make sure I'm in the right spot here. Oh yeah, CA file equals, and these are going to be where you will put your TLS certificate file for your if you've got an authentic certification or whatever, or you can point it at a snake oil cert you generate for yourself. I might do a bonus content video that will show you how to generate a cert if you want to do that, but there's tons of them out there. Look it up. I believe there's even one on the system by default when you install Postfix. So, if you want to set up a custom one, you can use this. I think if you don't configure these lines, though, it will actually use the default snake oil certs by just sort of out of the box. I could be mistaken on that. I don't know. I always configure mine with an authentic one. But I'm going to put them in here. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to point them like at Etsy and then SSL and then I don't remember the folder structure. I think it's like public and private. And anyway, you're going to want to set your CA file to your certificate authorities file. That's what's important there, right? And then SMTP, which that's actually incorrect there. It's SMTP TLS. Okay, so and then underscore, and the next one is TLS cert file underscore cert file, like so, right? And for this, you're going to want to do Etsy SSL, and you're going to want to point it to your server certificate file, and these need to be in PEM format. PEM format. SMTP underscore TLS key file. Okay, and this is going to be Etsy SSL and then the key. Now this Etsy SSL thing, that's also optional. It's just wherever you put your certificates. You can put them in Etsy SSL and then make your own directories, or put them in existing directories, or however you want to do it. It's really up to you. I think the standard is you want to put it in the SSL directory, but there is nothing that says you absolutely have to. And it may even be more secure not to, because if somebody wanted your certs, that's probably where they'd look. It's up to you what you want to do with that. I personally am not going to generate certs for a demonstration server, so unless I do another demonstration video on specifically that thing later on, and then maybe I'll come back in here and show you how to make them work. But for now, I'm just putting these lines in here so you can see what they are, so that if you have a cert that you can set up, you can see the directives you need to enter in here in order to point those certs to this thing, so that it can use your SSL authentication, or your SSL encryption when it's doing things like authentication and sending and receiving email. So the last one you can do is SMTP D underscore, which is the daemon underscore TLS underscore CA file equals. All right, and so and I'll just show you this one, because there is an SMTPD for every single one of them. This one's Etsy SSL, whatever. What that's going to be for is setting up client-side certificates. So if you want your users to be able to authenticate with a system certificate, you can set that up. Okay, so the next line we're going to want to enter in is SMTPD underscore TLS underscore AUTH underscore only, and we're going to want to set that to yes, and that will just make sure that you can only authenticate to your system over TLS encryption, and that's a security thing to make sure that your password and credentials are not able to be discovered by packet sniffing and that sort of thing. So you definitely want to enable that. Set that to yes. The next one is going to be SMTPD, or SMTP, excuse me, and then underscore TLS underscore security underscore level, and we're going to want to set that to may. You can also set it optionally to encrypt, like so. So this is an either or thing here. So in other words, if you want to set it to encrypt, it would look like this. So basically what this does is it takes the place of an earlier command that is now deprecated, where it was called enforce TLS, SMTP underscore enforce TLS. So that's deprecated, don't use that anymore. Instead use this. And what this does is basically encrypt says, okay, we're always going to encrypt and only talk to servers that have encryption. So when you send an email from your server to a server out on the internet, if that server does not have encryption enabled, cannot accept TLS encryption, then your server will bounce the email back and you will not be able to deliver that email. And on the other hand, if that server does accept encryption, then you can obviously deliver it just fine. But with the may option set there, it's in what's called opportunistic mode, which means that if the external server does accept encryption, say Outlook or Gmail does accept encryption, then your system will attempt to use said encryption, and it will send the email over an end-to-end encrypted line. But if that opportunistic email fails, say some third-party person has set their server up so that it doesn't accept encryption, then you can it will fall back to plain text and send it in the clear. In a highly secure environment, that would be ill-advised, because it's highly secure and you want to make sure all encryption is completely secure. So in that case, you may want to stick with enforce, encrypt, excuse me, and basically force all systems to communicate via encrypted TLS. But in the case of most servers, where you want to be able to contact customers and clients and just whoever you want,
you're going to want to set that to may and leave it in an opportunistic mode. And always remember that you can still encrypt over PGP. So you can set up PGP at the client level, and then your clients can be able to encrypt their emails, their outgoing emails, however they want, and then guarantee end-to-end encryption. So that is how that is done. So at this point, you can do WQ or whatever, however you save in the particular text editor you happen to be using. In my case, it's WQ, and that should bring you to a finished product on that particular file. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to edit yet another file in this Postfix directory. So we should have quite a few. And the one we're interested in is, actually now we're going to be creating a file. So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to do vi and then mysql underscore virtual underscore mailbox underscore domains .cf, and this should look pretty familiar because we typed it into the last file that we set up. Okay, so in here you're going to want to create some configuration data, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to type in hosts like this. We're going to do equals and 127.0.0.1. We're going to set the user equals postfix, the password equals, and this is where you're going to put your password in that you configured before. In my case it was root, and then the DB name equals postfix, and then we're going to do a query. And that's what these basically are. They're just queries, right, to the database to help us out. So this should point to your database on your system. So in this case, host is 127.0.0.1. If you don't know what that is, you probably shouldn't be doing this, but that is the local host address. So basically, it's your loopback. It points back to the same system. The reason we're using that is because the MySQL database is on this system. If you were configuring this in a way where the MySQL database was on a different system, which you totally can do, then you need to change that address to point to that particular system. The user is the username for your database that you configured when we were configuring the system, when we configured basically the database and all that earlier during the installation process. The password is the password for the database, and the DB name is going to be postfix or whatever you configure the database name to be for your SQL database. The query we're going to use is this, and I don't believe it's case sensitive, but go ahead and try to follow my casing anyway because it just makes it easier to read, and it's proper. From domain where domain equals, and make sure you're careful with the syntax. Follow what I'm typing here pretty much as exact as you possibly can, because it'll get really squirrely and messy if we don't. So, and back up mx equals 0. I can type. And active equals 1. Okay, so that's your query that you're going to send, and what that's going to do is it's going to look for a specific. It's going to basically find the domain column from the domain table where it matches that query, basically. In layman's terms, anyway, that's what it does. All right, so now we're going to create another file, and we're going to call this one, just do vi or your favorite text editor, whatever it may be. You can also use touch to create the file if you want. I'm just going to use vi and just do it all in one go because that, in my opinion, makes the most sense. So you do MySQL virtual, make sure we get it spelled right or it will definitely break things. And then mailbox underscore maps.cf. And it's going to be very similar to the other file. So if you want to copy and paste things or whatever, it might be wise. Because for the most part, these are going to be very redundant. 127.0.0.1, and then user equals postfix password. In my case, it's going to be root. Make sure you change this information again to fit what your setup looks like. db name equals postfix, and then query equals select maildir from mailbox where username equals s and active equals 1. Which actually, because I followed a tutorial for some of this myself, I can see that I've already made a casing mistake, but I'm not going to bother to go back and fix it because it's, like I said, it's kind of not relevant. So the next one you're going to want to make is virtual underscore alias, alias underscore maps dot cf. And really, these file names are arbitrary. They do not need to follow this scheme necessarily. They just have to match what you put in that file. So if you want to change the naming scheme on these guys, that's fine. I just pulled these names out of older tutorials that I followed when I set up my very first one. So all my configuration files are set up to match these name schemes in many places. With the exception of my actual production machine, which uses a different scheme because, you know, security. So, but my tutorial notes all use the same information that I pulled from old tutorials online. And so a lot of this information, if you go looking on the internet for different tutorials on this, may look somewhat familiar because some of it was pulled from that, and other bits of it are my own doing and my own added stuff that I sort of tacked in there. So you'll notice mine gets a little more complex in certain areas than what you might see on other tutorials around the internet, more or less depending on what I added and what I cleaned up. Again, just make sure you're careful with your spelling and follow my input here as exact as you possibly can. Otherwise, you may create a lot of troubleshooting problems for yourself later on down the line. So that's the aliases, and we want did I do that one right? Let me double check that I did that one right actually. Double check where address asset active. Okay, yeah. Just wanted to make sure I was telling you guys correctly. Alright, so the next one is going to be the relay domains. So relay .cf. Okay, we're going to do hosts. Oops. Hosts equals 127.0.0.1 all over again. User equals postfix. Password equals root. db name equals postfix, and then query equals select domain from domain where domain equals CS around quotation mark there, and backup and X. So that should be the last one. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we should have a user called Postfix. And what we want to do is we just want to do add user Postfix Sazel, just like that. Oop, and I mistyped that. Okay, so now we should have groups Postfix, and we should have Postfixes in Postfix and Sazel, just like you see on my screen there. Okay, so now we're going to look at some secure SMTP ports. That's what we want to do. So let's have a look at our master.cf file. Alright, so in our master.cf file, it's master. It should be right in this directory we're already in. We're just going to uncomment some things. So the first thing we're going to do is, let's double check. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we want to uncomment this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. Okay, so what you want to do here, what I did in my config file for this was I actually copied this line, which you can just select it like that. If you're working out of the CLI, you might not be able to do that. You might need to retype it, or, you know, whatever you want to do. Just make another version of the line. And it's going to be an uncommented line, so it'll be over there normally. And you just want to add permit underscore Sazel underscore AUTHENTICATED comma reject. So basically that says permit only Sazel authentication, reject everything else. And then we also want to pull we want to uncomment this guy here to get rid of its milter. And then we also want to uncomment this guy. We want to pull this one, this one, this one, and this one. Oops. Actually, we want to do exactly the same thing we did here, but we want to do it down here. So it should say exactly the same thing as the one that is on the upper one there. And then we want to uncomment that last line as well. Yeah, I don't believe there's any more changes to that guy at all. And what that should do is that should allow you to use all of the interfaces and ports that we want set up. Because this is the secure one here. Alright, so go ahead and save that out with those changes, and that should be it. Alright, now we want to install Dovecot. Okay, so to install Dovecot, we're going to go apt-get install Dovecot -imapd Dovecot pop 3D if you want it. I will install it just to show you that that's how you do it. You don't necessarily have to if you're not going to use it. Dovecot MySQL, that's important. Dovecot LMTPD. Alright, let's go ahead and do that, and it should install without a hitch, hopefully. And it should actually go pretty quickly. Yep, there it goes. Alright, so that was quick and fast and easy. Alright, let's go ahead and work with our configuration files here. So we're going to cd out of this directory, and we're just going to hop over into our Etsy and then newly created Dovecot directory. And in here, we're going to look at Dovecot mysql.conf.ext is the way I have it named. And we're just going to do driver equals mysql. And actually, I think the way I do it, I keep it spaced like that. Connect. And this is going to equal host. And again, this is you're connecting to your your host for your database. So make sure this points to your database. DB name is going to be Postfix. User is going to equal Postfix, or whatever your username is. And your password is going to equal whatever you set your password to be. In my case, it is root. And then default pass scheme equals MD5-crypt. And this is just the one I pulled out of various tutorials. You might can change it, I think, and get away with it. User underscore query equals select. And we're going to do home vmail and then %d/%in, and then as home, comma 3000 as UID, comma, which actually I do believe I did a case error there. And then let's see, as UID, and then 3000 as GID from mailbox where username equals %u. Okay. So let's break this down just a little bit here. So what we're doing essentially is we're going to be selecting or finding our user's home directory for email. That's what this is essentially doing. So this is pointing our Dovecot at our physical mailboxes based on what's in the database. So basically, the mailbox directory will be a file system stored in the home directory under this, and then you're going to have the domain and then the username or the name of the user is what these are placeholders for. And so what that's going to do is it's going to point them at that, and it's going to set this as the UID, which, if you remember, is this user and group that we set. So if you change that user and group name, which is perfectly fine, you totally can. I'm just going by what I pulled out of various tutorials online, like I said. This user and group name here can be changed, but if you do, you need to make sure you change that 3000 in all of the different places you change, that you set it up as. But that is just basically the user ID for the vmail user. So they'll all have ownership of all the various directories, so that Dovecot can then access those directories to retrieve mail for the people who log in. And then this, of course, is the database that you're pulling it from, the table of the database that you're pulling it from, because the database itself is actually, this is the DB name. So it'll be the Postfix database from the mailbox table, and then this is the information you're finding, basically. And then this is basically retrieving only the one for the specific username of placeholder %u. Alright, so now we're going to do one more query. We're going to do a password underscore query, because the Dovecot is going to use SQL authentication, whereas your other side will use SASL authentication. Select password from mailbox where username equals %u. And that'll be our placeholder for the username. So that's basically how it's going to find the password. Alright, so that's it for that file. We can save that out. Now we need to edit the auth 10 auth files. So we're basically going to cd into confd, because that's where we're going to live for a little bit. and we're just going to edit this file 10 off. Alright, so this is the 10-off file, and we're going to edit a few entries in here. So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to uncomment this plain text off thing here, and we're going to tell it no. And then we're going to go down to auth mechanisms. Let's see. Okay, and that should be plain, comma, or no, we don't even need that, just login. Okay, and then, oops. Now we want to go all the way down to the includes, so let's have a look. Alright, so includes system auth conf. Alright, let's take you and let's just kind of put a comment that one out. And we want to use instead this SQL authentication guy here. And that should do it. Yeah. Okay, so that's that. Alright, so now we want to do vi and then 10-mail.conf. And in here, we just want to edit the mail location. So let's see, actually I already see it. It's down here. Mail location. Alright, so this we want to change to our directory where we're putting our mail. And so what that's going to be is inbox. We're going to change mail location to mail dir, because we're using a mail directory, colon. And we're going to do home, vmail, %d, %in, and then we're going to do colon, and then index equals /home /vmail /d or %d /%in, and we're going to do indexes just like that, and that should give us that. Okay, and then we're going to do ssl.conf, and in here we're just going to do ssl equals yes. And if you have CA information and such, you can add that stuff here because you have CA certificate directories and such. So I just want to point that out. If you're doing client CA authentication, you do it here. But we're not. At least not on this system, so we don't need it. Alright, the 20 IMAP configuration is another thing we want to do. So let's go ahead and buy 20 and then IMAP conf. Alright, so in here we want to do max user IP connections as the biggie. Let's see. Max user IP connections. We just want to uncomment this. And that's basically the maximum number of IP IMAP connections allowed for a user from each IP address. So it's not that a user can have only 10 simultaneous connections from different clients. It's a user can only have 10 connections from one IP address. So if they're logged into 10 different web clients, they're going to have problems after that 10th one. And you can set that number to whatever you want. I generally leave it at the default, but you know, if you want to decrease load on the server or prevent people from connecting with too many various clients all at once, that's something you can do. And then we want to change the auth SQL conf ext file. And in here, let's see, we should have, I see. So we want to make sure we put my SQL on here. And yeah, the same with this one as well. We want to make sure that our args here, we just change this to MySQL to keep in line with the way we named things, or the way things are named on the system. And I believe that's the only major changes we even need in this file at all. So let's go ahead and save and quit that. Alright, so now we should have 10 master, and there was a couple of errors in a few tutorials on this one that I saw, so I'm going to make sure I get this right. So in here, what we want to do is service LMTP is the big one. Okay, so let's see, we should see service LMTP. Okay. Okay, so in this 10-master file, we just want to make sure we set up a Unix listener, and we want to change this LMTP bit here, and we just want to set that to var spool postfix private, and then Dovecot-LMTP. Under here, we want to set the mode to 666. That's fine. 0666. And then we want to set the user equal to postfix, and the password, or the group, equal to postfix. And this is actually a user on the system, so there should be a user and a group on the system called postfix. And I think there's another thing we want to do in here, so let's double check before we end up quitting out on this. Yeah, it's this guy here, I think. You want to uncomment this, and then this. Okay, so now that should do it, actually, I think. So once we got that done, save that, and we should be able to restart some services at this point. So we can do sudo, or actually in this case just systemctl restart post, or let's go with Dovecot first. Hopefully that should work. And then systemctl restart postfix. And all should be right and well with the world. If nothing has gone wrong, you shouldn't receive any errors there. You can check the status if you want by doing systemctl status and then one of those two services. And it looks like it failed to run on my system. And that's probably because we're missing some milters. Actually, no, error in configuration file confd do dash, I think it's L. Okay, there's an error in the conf file at line 106. So I'm going to show you guys how you can troubleshoot a little bit. So let's do vi and then 10-master.conf. And in here, I think you can do what is it? Set number. And we can actually can just do 106 to find that line that it has a problem with. Now it said there was a problem with that line 106, I think. Okay, so this is why you need to be careful when you uncomment things. So when we uncommented this guy here under SMTP auth, we forgot to uncomment this curly brace. So hopefully you guys caught that. If you did, kudos. If you did not, change that in your master.conf file and then restart Dovecot one more time Let's check its status, and we should see that it's running correctly, hopefully with no errors. Let's also check the status of Postfix to make sure we didn't miss anything there as well. It's best to go ahead and do that while we have a chance, because we're going to end up with issues if we don't check to make sure things are running well now. So it's okay if you see a bunch of issues currently with Postfix, because we got a lot of stuff that we have not configured with Postfix. But you should see that it is active and running and hasn't actually errored out. So as we continue to set up the milters and configure the rest of Postfix, we should be okay. So at this point, we should also be able to log into Postfix admin, I think. But before we do that, I want to look at something real quick. Let's go into our Apache directory here, or Etsy Apache. Apache 2, that is. Okay, and in here, let's check out what we have for sites, or for our Apache conf mods. Conf enabled. So I think it's in conf enabled. And in here, let's look at postfixadmin.conf. So vi postfixadmin.conf. Okay, so that just shows what our postfix admin is. So let's go back out and go into sites enabled. Okay, so we only have the default site enabled, and we want to change that. So let's cd back out of this guy and go into sites available. And in here we should see we have a default ssl.conf file. So we want to turn on SSL because it's really stupid to try and access our administrative configurations over HTTP and not HTTPS. Like, extremely stupid. It undermines all of your security. So let's go ahead and do, you can actually do this with a symlink, or you can use A2EN site, I think, and then default SSL conf, and then you should be able to go into cd dot, and then sites. Sites enabled, and in here you should see your SSL, and if you want you can rm your 00 default.conf to get that off of there, so it's impossible to actually connect to your site unless you have your SSL default-SSL configuration done. You might also want to consider coming into, let's see, where's it at, ports.conf, go by ports.conf, and just disable listen 80 here, and you can do that with a comment. Just pound it, just put your comment in there and disable listen 80, and that will prevent your site from giving you any errors when you disable your default site 000-default. Because the thing is, if you disable this without removing that port, you'll get an error that Apache is listening on that port but doesn't have anything to actually connect to. So in order to resolve that, you need to make sure you disable it in ports.conf as well. In your sites enabled file, you should, in theory, I believe, have your snake oil certs pre-configured for you. If you do not, you want to go to sites available, and then vi SSL, I think it's default actually, ssl.conf, all right, and then come down here, and here you should have, yeah, these are your certificate file and certificate key file, and they should point to the snake oil certs by default, and that is perfectly fine. You can actually leave that as it is. You don't need to give it any kind of a special certificate authority, configured cert, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's for local internal stuff. You're never going to access this stuff over the internet, or at least I would hope not. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to look for, all right, so let's cd into mods available, and we should see that we have SSL there. We need to make sure that's enabled actually. So let's go ahead and ls site or mods enabled. Make sure we see SSL in there, and doesn't look like we do, because I don't believe by default it is actually enabled. So all we need to do is a2en mod SSL, and that should do it. That should do it. Okay, so now what we need to do in order to make sure all of our Apache changes have taken effect is we need to restart our Apache server. So let's just do systemctl restart Apache 2, and that should restart our Apache 2 server. And if all has gone well, we should have our Apache 2 server showing no errors. And let's just double check that, because systemctl does not always show errors when there's a status problem. So let's go ahead and check the status, and if all has gone well, we should see that it is active and running. So we just enabled, to recap, we've enabled our mod SSL, and we've configured our default -SSL default site and placed that. And then we have also configured Postfix admin to Postfix admin and also PHP myadmin to be a part of that. So let's go ahead and have a look at Postfix admin. Let's see. So let's go ahead and see if we can't pull up Postfix admin really quick. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to go to localhost, and then we want to go to Postfix admin, and this should give us, of course, we want to do https://. All right, and now we should get a site that says this is untrusted. It'll look like this in Firefox. I don't know what it looks like in Chrome. I don't use Chrome enough to know. But in Firefox or Iceweasel, if you're using the default browser for Debian, it should look similar to this. You're just going to want to add an exception. It can be permanent. It doesn't matter. And this should give you a Postfix admin site. But it does not appear to be working correctly yet. Okay, so I figured out what the problem was, I think, with our Postfix admin page. And I think the problem was that our PHP mod, our Apache mod for PHP 5 was not available. So what you need to do in order to make sure that's the case is you need to switch to the etc Apache 2 mods available directory. Just cd to that directory, and once you're there, just ls, and make sure you see in here these two files, php5.load and php5.conf. If you have those two files, you're fine. You don't need to do anything as far as apt-get is concerned. If you do not have those two files, you need to run the following command. apt-get install live apache 2-mod-php5. And once you do that, you should get these two packages to come down. Now mine's not going to do anything because I just installed it kind of off screen while I was testing to figure out what the heck was going on. And so after this, you need to double check and make sure these are enabled. So we're just going to go up a directory and we're going to change to mods enabled. And in here we should see a link to those two files. If you see a link to those two files, you're fine. You don't need to do anything else. If you do not see a link to those files, you need to type in a2en mod php 5, just like that, and then hit enter, and it will enable those mods. In my case, it's already enabled. So at this point, you can restart Apache. So just do systemctl, and of course, all this needs to be done as root. But systemctl restart, and then Apache 2. And that should allow Apache to link up with PHP like it should. And let's just double check the systemctl status on Apache 2 and make sure it's running correctly, which it is. And now that we've got that, we should, in theory, be able to connect up to our system. And we can. Let's see if we can actually get to setup.php and run it like this. Okay, yeah, so go to this link if you can. It should be localhost postfix admin setup.php. Make sure you prefix it with HTTPS if you were smart enough to set up the SSL HTTPS configuration in Apache that I showed you earlier. You're going to want to set up a password here. I'm going to choose root. Root, make yours unique and not terrible. And you're going to want to create a password hash. Okay, it says the password I entered is too short. Okay, that should work. Okay, so it says if you want to use the password you entered as the setup password, edit config inc php and set this hash right here to our setup. So let's go ahead and follow those instructions. Let's go to our etc postfix admin, and then in here we'll go to our config. Oops. Sorry, we'll use vi. You can cd to the directory if you want, but in here we need to set our conf setup password, which is this guy right here. Now in your case, you're going to want to just you know, use yeah. So in your case, if you're doing this in the CLI, hopefully you're SSHing in by now. If you're not using SSH, you're going to have a lot of typing on your hands. If you're using SSH, you'll be able to copy from your remote terminal to your or from your web browser to your remote terminal by simply using the middle mouse button or with the right click and copy and paste feature here. Hopefully that's the case. And you're using SSH. So let's just go ahead and write that file out, and let's go ahead and set up our super account. So our password is going to be root. So we don't need to reboot it in order to get that. So that's fine. Okay, we'll use our password, and then we'll go ahead and create our admin account, which we'll call root@domain.com. And our password here is going to be root and then root. Okay, so now admin has been added. So now we should be able to come back here and log in. .php. Here we should be able to type in root@domain.com. And then here we should be able to type in our password, which should be root. If all has gone well, you should get a page that looks very similar to this. And here you can do adding your virtual domains and configuring your system however it is you want. You should be able to get your domain list here, and you can create your new domain. This is where you set up your email address. I'm not actually going to do this just yet, though. I'm going to wait because I think we should configure our milters and everything else first and get the server fully configured. But at this point, you probably can actually send and receive emails. So yeah, that should do it actually for the time being. I think that brings us to, yeah, the next bit is going to be where we install all our milters and do all our security setups. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this video off here because I don't want this thing to be like 6 hours for one video. I'd like to try and keep it under the hours, the 60-minute sort of buffer window there. So I'm going to end this off. This will be part 2 right here. In part 3, we'll cover our milters, Spam Assassin, ClamAV, Graylist, and we'll also I'm going to go ahead and throw in the configuration for metrics, and also the configuration you're going to need in order to get Postfix admin to be able to sanely be able to reset user passwords. I'm also going to do a demonstration in that video to show you that you can, in fact, hopefully connect up to this thing and send and receive email from account to account, and it should work out well. So okay, thank you guys very much for watching this video. I totally appreciate it, and I hope you guys have learned a lot. I hope you stick with me through part 3. Come back and see the rest of this, because right now I would not recommend this thing going into production in any sense of the word. We're not done yet, but hopefully you can send and receive emails now. I don't know if you should necessarily try testing that, but if you want, you can. I don't think it'll hurt anything. Just don't play with the config files to try and make it work if it doesn't. We'll get there in the next video, because if it's broken, I'll troubleshoot it in the next video for you. But okay, all right, so good. Hopefully this has been informative, and I'll see you in the next video.